Yes, I am.
Oh, hi. Welcome to Freedom Fighters for America Radio. This is Dr. Betty Martini. And so how are you tonight?
I'm just great. Delighted to be back with you.
Welcome, Dr. Betty.
Thank you.
Baby.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Betty. It's so good to hear your voice again. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm just doing great. Working hard.
Yeah. Well, I hear you just got back from Europe, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about what was going on over there.
Well, actually, I wasn't in Europe. I was in St. Martin. I was in Europe recently, a few months ago, and lectured in Ireland, and they set up Mission Possible Ireland. And and then I was in England, and I met with some people doing a study in France. And so I got a lot of information sort of around the world wherever we went. And the big thing was getting Mission Possible Ireland started, because I know that they've wanted to do that for many years, and they work with somebody in Parliament, and so this worked out just wonderful.
Well, for those that aren't familiar with about your site, why don't we give them a little bit of information about your site and a little bit of information about aspartame and what aspartame does to your body?
Okay, first of all, because I've got several sites, but my personal site is www.mpwhi.com, which stands for Mission Possible World Health International. And you also get a lot of information on doorway.com, but just remember 1 O in the door, DORWAY.com. And I'm the founder of Mission Possible with operations in 40 different nations, and we're a global volunteer force. I work with the world experts. The whole idea is to educate the public so they will not use it because it's such a deadly poison. Now, it's masquerading as an additive. When you think of aspartame, you think of NutraSweet, Equal, Spoonful, E951 in Europe, Canderel, Benevia, and because the patent's over, it can be put in anything, and is probably in at least 10,000 products today. But what it really is an addictive, excito-neurotoxic, carcinogenic, genetically engineered drug that interacts with other drugs and vaccines. In fact, you've heard so much about the swine flu vaccine and you know, what it can do to you, and it's going to affect mostly the people with neurological problems, or say children with birth defects, and things that aspartame causes. And it's because of the, like squalene, it's an adjuvant, where aspartame 2 is an adjuvant. It's an immune stimulator, and so it's a potentator. And as Dr. Russell Blaylock says, all adjuvants cause the same thing: MS, lupus, Lou Gehrig's disease, autism, and that's exactly what aspartame causes. However, Dr. H.J. Roberts has written a 1,000-page medical text, and there's no way to even explain in a radio program how many diseases it does cause. The FDA report lists 92 symptoms, from 4 types of seizures to coma and death. And the medical text, of course, lists a lot more than that. And to think how serious this is, just remember Gulf War illness is that, as Dr. Blaylock says, that there was a 200% increase in ALS. That's a terrible disease. You know, you can't move, but you have your senses. And he says it's because of the squalene, the adjuvant, in the anthrax, but they were also drinking diet soda with aspartame, and it precipitates ALS too. So it was like a double whammy, and so that's what Gulf War illness is. And then, of course, because aspartame is so poisonous, it causes chemical hypersensitization. It interacts with even things like Splenda, because Splenda is a chlorocarbon poison, but also toxins. So when they had depleted uranium, it makes it all a whole lot worse. So we're talking about something that was at one time listed with the Pentagon in an inventory of prospective biochemical warfare weapons submitted to Congress. And here's why it is so deadly. You know, if I were to say to you, free methyl alcohol is a severe metabolic poison, anybody would agree with me. If I were to say formaldehyde is embalming fluid, anybody would agree with me. If I were to say a brain tumor agent's a poison, they would agree with me. If I were to say an excitotoxin is poison because it stimulates the neurons of the brain to death, causing brain damage, they would agree. If I were to say a neurotoxin floods the brain, goes past the blood-brain barrier, they would say, yes, that's a poison. But the FDA will argue when all these things are in aspartame, and that's what aspartame is. You're talking about 40% of aspartic acid, which is isolated and excitotoxin. It has a methyl ester, which immediately becomes free methyl alcohol and converts to formaldehyde. And the Traco study showed that it embalms living tissue and damages DNA, by which you can destroy humanity. There is 50% phenylalanine, which as an isolate is neurotoxic. You may find 4 or 5% in meat and milk, not 50%, but it floods the brain and lowers the seizure threshold, depleting serotonin, causing psychiatric and behavioral problems. And then you've got the whole molecule, which breaks down to something called diketopiperazine, which is a brain tumor agent. And you may have heard all the about the explosion of brain tumors, and we believe this is what it's from. There's a place down in West Palm Beach in that area called the Acreage, and babies are being born with brain tumors. Their parents have brain tumors. Someone said they had the water checked, and I was talking to Dr. Roberts. He says they need to find out if they're on aspartame or NutraSweet. So this is why it is so deadly and why people all over the world are willing to work like I do 7 days a week to warn people, because it is so deadly and because it is also an abortifacient, which means that if you're using it if you're not using it, I should say, and get pregnant and then get on it, you can lose your baby. That's a teratogen. It causes birth defects, mental retardation. And the reason I phrased it like that is because aspartame is also an endocrine disrupting agent. It stimulates prolactin, changes the menses, and causes infertility. And some people are sipping on Diapop or using aspartame products and have been trying to get pregnant for years and couldn't. And this is the reason. You simply can't get pregnant on something like this. But there are times when they're not using it where they can get pregnant. And, of course, once they do that, children are being born autistic with Tourette's. In one of the movies, the first movie that was made was called Sweet Misery, A Poison World, and it was followed by another one where they actually went to the ADD people, Feingold, and they said before aspartame was put on the market, there were no terms like ADD and ADHD, which it causes. And so today our children are medicated instead of educated, and, it's triggering all these different terrible neurodegenerative diseases. The Ramazzini studies have shown it to be a multi-potential carcinogen. The last study showed that it only takes a small amount to give you cancer, and that if you are pregnant and using it and the baby survives, that child can grow up and have cancer. And it's not like the FDA did not